Aaron Smith went from failed campaign on GameFound to a $673,000 raise on Kickstarter. But how exactly did he do that? The short answer, advertising. The long answer, Adam, games consultant here at Launchboom, and Aaron himself are actually gonna walk you through it. Plus, if you stick around to the end, I'll even give you a free audio copy of our book, Crowdfunded, that goes over more tips like these on how to have a successful crowdfunding launch. Aaron and Adam both recently joined us at our Crowdfunded Summit for a live presentation, but even if you didn't get to attend that, I broke down the presentation so that you can take away all of their learnings. Aaron is the founder and creator of Littlest Lantern and the mastermind behind SeaBeasts. He originally worked helping breweries and wineries open up, but when all of that came to a halt in 2020 with the pandemic, he was able to dive more into his creative projects. After swapping ideas back and forth with his friends, the idea of SeaBeasts hit him for an online contest and he won 3rd place. He spent the next 3 years playtesting and perfecting before ultimately deciding to launch on GameFound and failing. But then returning to Kickstarter for that over $600,000 launch. Adam is one of the game consultants at Launchboom who worked alongside Aaron for that Take-Two launch on Kickstarter and even playtested and maybe broke his game a little bit at Gen Con. They'll be walking through 7 different categories, including building Aaron's Superfan, creating a stellar landing page, perfecting his creative visuals, copy like headline and primary text, finding the right audiences, ad testing, and results. Let's hear directly from them on how that process started with building Aaron's Superfan.
Defining your superfan. Some of these traits are kind of like, how old is your superfan? What's their gender? What are their hobbies? Favorite games that they're currently playing? Wants and needs are a big one, right? What are their must-haves in a game? Frustrations with current games, challenges with playing games, and how can your game help them? All these things are going to help us define essentially where we're going to start off in our journey here when we're trying to target certain audiences. And this guy over here looks like he's definitely a super fan of something. I'm not sure if it's board games.
He looks like my super fans.
Yeah, he does. He looks like pillaging something. Yep. But But what I wanted to ask you, Aaron, is talk a little bit about this process and how it kind of, helped gain a little bit more clarity on, where to start with kind of marketing your game.
Yeah, so I mean, this was a completely new concept for me. I designed the game specifically for essentially people like me who didn't have a whole lot of time to play games, had a young family, had a spouse, and really wanted to have a game if you wanted to play solo or like you could bring non-gamers along, but it was a game really for like hobby gamers. That's kind of where I started with my superfan. I called him Zach because I had lots of friends Zach and I kept meeting Zachs everywhere, and I was like, all right, he's gonna be Zach. Kind of listed what movies he really likes, what kind of like things he does on the weekends, more outdoorsy kind of maybe focus too. That's kind of how I formed the person that this game was for. I don't know how in depth you want me to go beyond that too. That was kind of the first time I really thought of like who's going to be buying this game, because I designed it for this type of person. How do I relate to the rest of these people?
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's great. And it looks like this Viking guy is actually yelling Zach. He's at the A of the Zach.
Yeah, exactly.
Now that we know who your super fan is, let's check back in with Adam to see how to design a landing page that speaks directly to that fan and gets them really excited about your game.
We want to create a landing page, and we want to build a landing page that converts. We want simple imagery, copy that translate the game like clearly to our suspected superfan. I'm saying suspected because at the end of this, I want to talk to Aaron about what's his superfan actually the demographic that ended up signing up to buy his game. We want to make sure that it flows smoothly from theme intro into gameplay, something that is just very, very clear. So here we have the first portion. I'm going to go section by section on his landing page. So here we have the first section. We have the hero image, we have the headline, and we have the primary text here of the main section. If you take a look at this, it is a pretty simplistic but effective image. It is essentially just the game box with some depth on the background of the game art, it just looks really, really cool. When I saw it, it was the one I drew my eye to most because I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then, now I'm seeing the art. This is really neat. And it's something that looks like it would look good in my closet, my game closet. So that's a big plus. Then here, for our headline, we have a Viking game board, or a Viking board game of perilous adventure, legendary beast battles, and fearless blood rage. So right there, we're talking about not only the theme of the game, we're talking about what type of game it is. So you're giving the audience, or the person viewing this, a little bit of a, an intro into, okay, so right away, they're starting to make decisions in their head. They're going, okay, it's a board game. I'm in. It's about Vikings. I'm in. And then it's about legendary beast battles and fearless blood rage. Okay, this sounds fun. Okay, so what's the next step? The cool thing about this is in bold here, he has a thrilling cooperative. Okay, now we have another aspect of this game. So it is now a cooperative game. So now we're giving the viewer so much info just in this first section that it really kind of starts to, again, get their wheels going. And right here, you probably are going to get somebody who's like, I'm in, done, like sign me up now. And that's why we put the CTA here right after the first section, is you want to get that impulse buy. This section here has sold me. I don't need to scroll on anymore. That's it. I'm done. Sign me up. So the first section is the most important section, because this is where somebody's going to go, yeah, I want to scroll on and either learn more. Yeah, I want to put my email down, or I'm not interested anymore. So you have to kind of jump out and give the most amount of info you can about the game right in that first section. So now moving on to the next section. And this is kind of where I was talking about just a little bit earlier in the overview of the landing page, is where you want to start from theme intro or story intro and then going into gameplay. So here we have an intro into the world of SeaBeasts. So down here, we're starting to talk about the Viking lands, the Viking raids, you know, all the story and the theme that's going to be put into this game that you're going to be kind of immersed into. It's the immersion aspect of the landing page. And then here, instead of showing a piece of the game, we're showing some of the art to kind of get you excited about that world. So you're kind of starting it off like, hey, here's the game box. That's going to be the first thing you're going to see. Awesome. Move on. All right, let's dive into the immersion of the game. And then next, we have a section that shows one of the key features, and that's minis. And who doesn't love minis, especially SeaBeast minis? They're awesome. I mean, look at this. This thing is crazy. So this is definitely a huge selling point. So you want to kind of put that up like ahead so that people decide, okay, I want to continue to scroll. You want to push the scroll forward. That's always kind of like my saying, like push the scroll forward. You don't want them to stop unless they're signing up. That's fine. They can stop. Next, we kind of go into a bit of the gameplay. So starting off to kind of talk about a higher overview of how many minutes does it take to dive into a campaign, what's the gameplay like, and that's kind of ironed out over here. And then we start to get images of the actual game pieces. Now we're starting to introduce people to the physical item that they're going to be purchasing, which is very important because most of the time people want to know, like, what are the quality materials? What are the quality of components? I want to see them. And this just entices you more and more and more to either sign up or scroll. And then we have this section here, which is a very helpful section. It kind of just discerns, again, like an overview of like what the gameplay aspects are, like how many players, you know, how many minutes is the game going to take? What are the ages? And this is something you can find kind of on like the side of a game box. You know, when you go into a store, you look and hey, that's just a really quick, like, okay, this one's for me then. You know, if I like the Vikings, I like the cooperative aspect, I like the minis, I like the story. Is it worth it for me to play? Is it ages 3 and up? Is this a kid's game? You know, is it not? Perfect. All right, 10 and up. Hey, look, that's enough for me to play and enough for my family to play as well. So the audience I'm going for, if you fit into that, great. Then we put a second CTA in here. Sign up. You know, you want to put as many CTAs as you can without obviously being like ridiculous. The more you have within your landing page breaks, the better chance you have of getting those impulse purchases, especially if there is a section that touches somebody's heart a little bit more than another section. You want to make sure that they don't have to scroll all the way up to the top or scroll all the way to the bottom to sign up. So we have that second CTA there. So the next section goes into a little bit more of the gameplay, and this is showing now some of the game cards, and it's kind of introducing you to the characters, which is a big thing too. You're putting the audience in the seat. You're saying, okay, here's the character you're going to be. This is what your goals and actions are. So if this aligns with your interests, then this is the game for you. And you really kind of want to put them in the seat, because there's no better way to get somebody to say, yeah, this sounds fun to me, than actually having them visualize themselves playing it. And then over here, again, we just have some of the quick setup, approachable rules, and epic adventures. A very like high overview of kind of like the ease of use or the, you know, the gameplay aspects of this game. Right now, this is actually my favorite section. I was talking to Aaron about this earlier. I absolutely love this icon. This right here shows you what your turn round looks like. I mean, that's pretty cool. There's multiple things you can do in this game on a turn, and sometimes you forget. I don't know how many times during during playtesting I asked you, wait, what can I do next? Wait, can I do this next? So having this little graphic visual that shows you, hey, this is kind of what you can do. So the first thing you do is you sail, you figure out where you want to go. All right, then you got to pick up a few beasts depending on where you land. And then you got to figure out what actions to take with your Vikings. And then you can choose to do a couple other actions at the very end there. And then you play until the boat sinks, you lose all the cargo, or you sail to port, which apparently is extremely hard.
Yeah, the success rate is it's rough.
You know, the
especially
thing is,
for inexperienced Vikings, you know.
Yes. Well, I love it that you created a game that isn't like easy. You know what I mean? Like it's not, when you play an easy game, you're like, okay, the replayability has just gone down.
Right.
If it's not a party game, if this is a strategic game and you're like, okay, I'm winning this, then it's, especially with the co-op, right? Probably why I was so irritated with Pandemic, to be honest. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. But yeah, so this is definitely my favorite section. I think this just something just to kind of, again, put the audience into the seat. That's kind of like my main thing I want to like hammer on, is that if they're in the seat and they're playing it, they're going to buy it. That's just the way it is. And then we have a really cool little conclusion here that emphasizes the theme of the game and gives a viewer a small overview of the goal of the game with a really awesome graphic of the SeaBeasts, which is the title, So you want to see those beasts in the art. And I tell you what, when you pull out some of these, you're like, oh crap, I'm done. Like this guy. That guy's scary.
We wanted you to feel some dread,
there was a lot of dread. I was feeling, I needed to like take a couple days off after I pulled one of these guys. I was like, nope, I'm dead. So, and then of course our last CTA at the bottom of the landing page, again, so that they don't have to scroll up to the middle. You want to get them while they're like excited about the game.
Now that the page is designed, it's important to make sure that the creative visuals for your advertisements are up to par. Let's hear from Adam for his tips directly on this and see how SeaBeasts brought their game to life through creative imagery.
So next, we're gonna go into creative visuals. So when we start the creative visual test, we usually ask for about 4 uniquely different creative visuals. As you can see here, we have the box on the thematic background. We have a box and a card pack with a red arrow on a white background. So while these both have the box in it, they are uniquely different in the sense that one is thematic, one's not. One's a little bit more, one pops out a little bit more. The other one is, like I said, a little bit more cool and, aesthetically pleasing. And then you have a picture of the game pieces and the game board and some of the cards here. And then, of course, the minis, which I said is a huge selling point. Were these pretty easy to create?
Yeah, these were incredibly straightforward. I think like the hardest one was probably the one with the red arrow of the box, just because I had to figure out how to, do the packaging render and all that. But I used Canva for a lot of these because I had some of these visuals already for, various reasons. I think the third one there was all Illustrator, and then I kind of framed it in Canva to like the right ratios that we needed to run ads with. But yeah, it was all pretty straightforward, and it was basically bouncing back and forth between Illustrator and Canva, kind of like create the raw material in Illustrator and then pull it over to Canvas to kind of like play around with formatting a little bit more.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I also want to reiterate that these images don't need to be crazy intricate. Right. They can be very simplistic. I mean, it doesn't take much to create something that resonates with audiences, and obviously you did, or else we wouldn't be here. So
Yep. It's very true.
What your ads say can be just as important as how your ad looks. The words on your page need to be powerful, skimmable, and help tell your game's story. You're going to have to write 2 kinds of copy: your headline copy and your primary copy.
So the next thing we want to kind of like hone in on is our headline copy for our ads. And this is kind of going into the ad testing phase. So we have a couple different options here. These are the 4 that we chose. The hyperbole. So you have the ultimate game of Vikings versus Beasts. This is definitely like kind of dialing into that theme, and you got some really cool emojis to go with it that kind of pop, make people want to look, make people want to like read more, click. So something very much like this that's just kind of authoritative, like this is the ultimate game. And I know ultimate has been used a lot. But something along those lines that is very authoritative, that's saying like this is the best and you need to look at this or else you're missing out, because everybody has FOMO. So then we have a summary of features. So it's a fast-paced Viking themed ocean crawler. So right there you're pretty much again talking about kind of how the gameplay is, what the theme is, talking also about kind of what it's like adjacent to, almost like a dungeon crawler of sorts. So you're saying it's an ocean crawler. So that already is going to gain the interest of people who are into dungeon crawlers and fast-paced games. So you have a themed actions and goals. This one's pretty simple: survive, explore, and fight monsters in the strategic co-op. So you basically just want to give a couple actions, a couple gameplay actions, and then kind of give that overall goal so that people get an idea of what they're going to be experiencing when they play this game. It's very important because that could be something that sets off, like, again, like I'm going to go back probably 100 times. They're putting themselves in the chair, they're playing, they're understanding what those actions are, they're understanding what the main goal is. And that's a very important thing to kind of put forth and get people excited and entice them to want to click on your ad. And then of course a soundbite, which is something that could be pretty cool, it could be cheeky, it could be just something in your face that's saying, hey, Viking warriors wanted. And it's like, I want to be a Viking warrior, so like, yeah, definitely I'm going to sign up for this. So something that just catches their attention. And then moving on to the primary text copy of the ads, we have the bulleted feature list. This is pretty straightforward. This is certain key features of your game that you want to, outline and you want people to see first. With some thematic emojis really does kind of help bring it out of that, all white meta fun background, because meta is super not sterile. That's sarcasm just for you guys. And then we have a product description. Very easy, just simple product description every game. How you would describe your game to somebody if they asked about it. Testimonial reviews. Now, testimonials are very important in my opinion. I think they convert the most, and especially when you are specific about your testimonial. Saying this board game is fun, beta tester. That doesn't do anything for me. That doesn't do anything for anybody. So when you say something like, sometimes you sink fast, so it's easy to quickly start another voyage, you're diving right into the gameplay, the theme. You're being specific and you're talking about the uniqueness of your game. And I think that's where testimonials really shine, because now it's like, oh, somebody did actually play this. They didn't just steal a generic line and say beta tester. So I think testimonials are very important if they're specific and unique. And then an audience call out. So this is where you're essentially going to call out what you think what audience you think your game aligns with the most. So not enough time for the big boss battles or D&D? Try SeaBeasts, an easy to learn boss battler with quick setup, gameplay, and immersive storytelling. So right there, that tells you all you need to know about the game. And it also tells you you're not going to be on weeks to months long campaigns. This is something you can play in 45 minutes and play it again. So it's super important to kind of make sure you're calling out in the audience call out to the people you think align most with this game, especially if you're basing it off of another similar or, at least a game that you think your audience would align with.
Okay, you have your superfan identified, your landing page is built out, your ads look beautiful, and you have powerful copy for both. Now it's time to get those ads up and running. But we have to start by learning about audiences, or who you're going to target to see your ads.
All right, so now speaking of audiences. So the audiences we chose to start the test off was tabletop games, general board games, Lovecraft, and fantasy. Now, when we choose audiences, we want to start off in the test kind of going broad. And that's because we want to gain enough data to be able to kind of discern certain things. If we were to go narrow starting off, if we were to be like, hey, I think my super fan is super into this really niche, what's going to happen is we're probably going to hit audience fatigue a lot faster, which means that we're not going to get enough data to really kind of put anything together in the scaling phase of this process. So we want to go broad. So it's okay to go broad. And so we went with tabletop games, general board games. Now Lovecraft, I say it's okay to go broad. Lovecraft probably isn't the broadest of audiences, but that's okay. We really felt that this one was strong with the SeaBeasts theme and everything like that. And then we went with fantasy. And we usually target the US starting off because while we want to go broad, we also don't want to go too broad. We want to make sure we start to discern what ads are working well and what audiences are working well before we start to target other regions outside of the US.
Okay, now we know who our audience is for our ads. It's time to dive in and run some tests. But there is an art to this, and Adam and Aaron have some advice.
Jumping to the results of the first test, which is the creative visual test. Now, all of these tests are single variable, which means that we're testing one variable at a time and seeing what the best combination is. So the first, obviously, we have 4 different creative visuals. The second, we have this, we choose a creative visual from the creative visual test that actually worked, move it on to the headline test. Then we choose, 4 different headlines, same primary text, so on and so forth. So we're just basically testing one variable at a time to make sure we can kind of hone in on what we think is going to work best with the audiences we chose. So the end of the first test, which was the creative visual test, we have a cost per lead of $477, a cost per purchase of $26.95, 23 purchases, landing page conversion rate of 13.43%. So basically, the cost per lead is a little bit high, a little bit over our suggested benchmarks. The cost per purchase was a little bit high, a little bit over our suggested benchmarks. Suggested benchmarks for cost per lead are about $4. Suggested benchmarks for our cost per purchase is about $25, so just a smidge over, which is okay. And then the landing page conversion rate is a little bit lower than our 15% to 20% conversion rate benchmark. So we take the data that we gained from this test and we choose an image we felt resonated most with the audiences as an average, as a whole, and we move on to the headline test. So now the headline test, the results of that, cost per lead went down a little bit. So that's a good thing, right? $4.10. So we're closer to that $4 mark. Cost per purchase went up a little bit. This can happen. Sometimes we're hitting a certain part of the audiences that we might have hit. So we're getting a little bit of audience fatigue. It's all kind of dependent upon the market, right? But the landing page conversion rate went up to 23.62%. So that was the big one there that I kind of was like, well, there's the win there. Perfect. The win at the cost per lead going down and the win at the landing page conversion rate going up. So what do we do from there? So let's take the data that we learned here. Let's choose the headline that resonated most with audiences, and let's move on to the primary text test. Now the primary text test, this is, I'm so glad, sorry, Aaron, but I'm so glad this happened and I can kind of present this because I always like to kind of point out that even though this didn't go the way we wanted it to go, with all the data that we learned from the prior 2 tests, All data is good data, and you have to realize that in a testing phase, because we're trying to figure out baselines for your metrics. We're not necessarily trying to, hit a home run. We're trying to figure out, okay, where can we go moving forward when we actually decide to push more budget into these ads? Where should we not go? Where should we stop? So the cost per lead went up to $6.65. The cost per purchase jumped up to $101.10. Landing page conversion rate fell a little bit. Well, I say a little bit from the last one, but 14.81%. So what we're probably seeing here most likely is a little bit of audience fatigue, since I don't feel like we changed out the audiences. We were kind of pretty strong, kind of just like, let's just target. And I believe we switched one of the audiences out to a more narrow one to Vikings. And that kind of did okay.
It was okay.
It was odd. So, because we were like, come on, this is a Viking game. Like, let's go. Like, you should love Vikings. Maybe people who don't, people who love Vikings, maybe they don't love board games. I don't know. This is okay. This is what I consider good data, because now we're going to compile all this and kind of create an efficient scaling strategy that essentially will allow us to spend our scaling budget as we put more into the scaling phase, knowing what we know here, so we know not what to do, what not to do, basically.
Okay, you found your audience, you ran some tests. Now, how do you even go about analyzing those results?
So jumping into the overall test results, not bad, actually pretty positive. Cost per lead was $4.34, so just a smidge over the cost per lead benchmark. Cost per purchase, right under the benchmark. Landing page conversion rate, 19.22%. That's great. That's on the higher end of our suggested benchmark. So, hey, you know what? The overall test results, while that other test was not great, this is great. And this is showing us what stability may look like. So the test conclusion was the data was pretty much predicting a 2x return on ad spend. Now, that's not necessarily what is going to happen if we move forward. This is just showing, okay, with the data we have, if we were to continue with this cost per purchase of $24.78, let's just say that was our benchmark, essentially, we would be getting a 2x return on ad spend. And a 2x return on ad spend, I want to be very clear. Anytime you double your money on ad spend or on anything, that's a good thing. So there's a lot of people out there that, hey, I want a $200,000 campaign and I want to spend $10,000. If you make $20,000 off the $10,000 you spend, that's good. And you need to realize that that's positive. We can kind of figure out how to shoot for that higher goal, but it all depends on the data, right? So it all depends on what we're seeing.
Okay, what if, like Aaron, your ads are going well? How do you scale them?
So our scaling recommendations were to target VIP lookalikes. So all the VIPs that signed up, I think it was 95 of them at that point, and I think by this point, we were a little bit over 95, because in order to do that, you have to have at least 100. So I think we kind of moved past that 95 mark. So we're going to target our VIP lookalikes, pretty much people who are like the people who signed up, put the dollar reservation down. And then we're going to take our 2 best performing audiences and target other regions. So we take our 2 best performing ads, basically kind of looking at like the data that we have from the test and go, okay, let's take these. We know these work. Let's target our best performing audiences, and I think it was 2 best performing audiences that we had, and let's begin to kind of scale from there and put some more budget into it. So the conclusion of the VIP lookalikes was a cost per lead of $2.39, a cost per purchase of $8.64, 633 purchases as a volume, and a landing page conversion rate of 23.93%. So all of that data that we learned from the test, we just implemented into the scaling phase, and we're able to spend efficiently and create a massive amount of volume in one of the campaigns underneath our benchmarks by a lot. So that's kind of what the importance of testing is. Testing is very, very important. You don't want to just kind of jump in there and assume what you're doing. You want data. Everything has to be driven by data. Now let's look at the other regions test. So very similar, but even better. A cost per lead of $1.54, cost per purchase of $8.05, 718 purchases, and a landing page conversion rate of 24.49%. So again, taking all of that data and implementing it into the scaling phase really kind of bolstered, and I would assume, and I'm not going to assume that you felt this way, but you felt more confident spending more money knowing what the outcome is predicted to be. And that's kind of the most important thing.
Yeah, during the testing phase, it was like very helpful to be like, hey, we're going to dial these metrics a little bit. Don't be discouraged by like what we're seeing right now. We're basically finding those people. And it was crazy when we got those like VIP lookalikes. We just had that brand new audience that was just fresh. That was specifically the people that I was trying to reach, which was so cool. And it was minimally spending too, like on those tests. It was just like a little bit of spending, kind of hone in like on that target, and then it really paid off long term.
I love it. I think anything data driven for me is like, sign me up. You know what I mean? It's like if you're guessing, it's so anxiety. Oof. You know?
Yeah.
So prior to launch, his pre-launch numbers were 2,806 VIPs and 8,312 non-VIPs, which is awesome because as we know, VIPs do convert better than non-VIPs. So the more you have, probably the better your conversion rate's going to be. So yeah, 8,312 is awesome.
And what about during your campaign?
Now, When launching his campaign, the two most important things to kind of like think about and to lean on is basically the first week remarketing campaign and the last week. These are the two most important times because the first week you're going to have momentum. You're going to have that big boom on day one since you have the data that backs that, and you want to roll that into more momentum and start to target those people who may have signed up or those VIPs that signed up but haven't backed yet. So it's very, very important the first week. Now the last week is very important because now you're going to kind of start to kind of reach into that fear of missing out. You're like, hey, this is the last chance. You have the ability to get this at this price. Like, do it now. Most of us have FOMO, so that works really well. And that's going to be your two like momentum builders, the first week and the last week. The middle is kind of normal. You'll see some upticks, but it kind of baselines out and slowly starts to build volume, which is good. That's what you want. But the biggest boom, first week, last week. Now his post-launch. So he had 1,245 VIP backers, a conversion rate of 44.37%. And I believe you mentioned to me too that you had added a few manually as well. So technically about
quite a bit.
Close to 50%, right?
Yeah, there was a lot of people that did different emails and all that. So I've done a lot of manual matching up. So yeah, it's probably right at that 50%, which is
perfect. So,
amazing.
Hey, it's incredible. Yeah. Non-VIP backers, 761. That's incredible. Conversion rate of 9%, 9.16%. Total backers, including your organic traffic and anybody that signed up not through VIP or non-VIP, was $5,414, which gives you that total raised of $672,720, which is massive. I mean, that's great.
It's crazy.
It's incredible. It's as massive as the SeaBeasts that come out of your game.
Okay, that was a lot. Aaron is a real-life example on how your ads, creative, copy, and strategy behind them can make the difference between your campaign being a failure and a major success. As promised, I've linked the audio version of Crowdfunded below so you can get your free copy and learn more about the strategies that Aaron implemented, as well as everything it takes to bring your game from just an idea to fully funded on Kickstarter. And I would love to know, what questions do you have remaining about ads? Let me know below, and I'll bug some of our experts here at LaunchBoom to get you the answers you need.